Let's start looking at my game against Fabiano from yesterday. So the game started with e4. Fabiano played c5. Slight surprise. Thank you. Whoa. Thank you, GM John Davis 59 for gifting a sub to Gurokus. Thank you, Riot00 for subscribing with Twitch Prime, and Yahuger for subscribing with Twitch Prime. Nice game today. Thank you so much, Yahuger. So without further ado, this game against Fabiano was played in round 5 yesterday of the U.S. Championship. The game started e4, c5. Very minor surprise. Fabiano, pretty much for the last, I would say, year and a half or so, he's been essaying the Petrov defense as black. Very good results, very solid. Played in the candidates, played it with success in the World Championship match as well. So definitely a slight surprise. But having said that, Fabiano did play the Sicilian Shevchnikov variation against Sam Sevian as well as A. Wonder Liang in his previous 2 black games. So while it was a slight surprise, it wasn't that big of a surprise to me. So d4 is played. Fabiano took. I played knight d4. He played knight f6, and then I played knight to c3 here. And here, Fabiano played e5, knight b5, d6. I played bishop to g5. Fabiano played a6, played knight a3, b5, all very standard, well-known lines. Here I played knight to d5. The board is not moving. Is the board? The board is frozen. Oh, there we go. Now it updated, right? Did it update? It's good now. Okay, it is perfect. All right. Elevation says, so glad you beat him. He's so boring. I did not beat Fabiano in this game, so not sure about that. But anyway, typically the board never moves, just the pieces do. That's being very, very literal. So, all right, so knight d5 is what I played. Bishop f6, gf6, knight d5, f5, or bishop g7 is another completely different variation. And I've played this before. I think I won a game against Alexei Shirov and Vaikonze some years ago, the year that I won the event. So I have played this line with bishop f6, but I decided to just follow Sam Sevian instead. I played knight d5, bishop e7, takes, and I played c4 here, b4, knight to c2, a5. And up to this point, we're following Fabiano's first round game against Sam Sevian. And here I played a move that is definitely the most testing line. I played queen f3 here. c4 is an interesting line. c3 is the old line. It's been played a million different times. Black can play bishop g5, knight e7, bishop e6, many different setups. But normally it goes something like this with a4 takes, rook a4, and eventually a5 or knight e7. There's rook b8 as well. And it's a very positional line, but black has proven equality in many of the most recent examples. So for that reason, I decided to play c4 like Sam. Fabiano played b4, knight c2, and he played a5. The main line normally goes castle, and white can play things like g3 and h4. White can also just put the bishop like on d3 or e2. And it's a very positional game, but this is more common. So here, b4, knight c2, Fabiano played a5. Now I played the move queen to f3. And here Fabiano played bishop e6, which I believe is the main line. Black can also play things like bishop g5 or castles. Did the live just started? Yeah, I just went live a few minutes ago, so you didn't really miss very much. Just started analyzing the game against Fabiano here at the start, so didn't miss anything at all. All right, so here, after queen f3, Fabiano thought for a while. I played bishop e6, played rook to d1. Fabiano took the knight. It's important to remove this knight. There also are ideas like if you play bishop g5, white can maybe play c5 here. And the queen's on d8. There are ideas with bishop b5, and there are a lot of issues here in the center for black. Green stuff, yes, this is some lovely green liquid. It's not absinthe, I'll tell you that much. So all right, so rook d1, bishop takes d5. I played c takes d5. Important to take with the pawn. If you take with the rook looks nice, but black can simply sidestep with queen c7. And castles, knight e7, knight d4 ideas. The rook looks really nice on d5, but it doesn't do anything special. Never absent. Thank you, Swim19, for subscribing with Twitch Prime. Congrats on your performance so far at the US Champs. Thank you so much, Swim19. You guys, I've been streaming many times now, so if you start talking about the sound, you know, it's pretty obvious what the issues are. I've already explained it many times. Thank you, Chessbait, for giving a sub to Croakspur. So that's why I took on d5 here with the pawn. No, this is not absent though. Like I've actually had absent in Prague. So, but this is not absent. So Logan Augustus says 400 viewers. I must be here early. Yeah, just getting started. So quite early. All right. So in the game, I played c takes d5. And here, Fabiano played knight a7. It's worth noting, yes, that I do have real water, so this green stuff is not like, I'm not drinking water out of the sewer. It's not, you know, it's not any of the poisonous water from Flint or anything like that. So knight a7 is what Fabiano played. Before the game, I had looked at knight b8 or knight e7. I had not really considered this knight a7 move, but it's a logical move, long-term. Black can try to put the knight on b5 and go to d4 potentially, or go to c8, b6, d7, c5. So the knight's a little bit awkward, but there are two spots you can put it on. Space Ghost Esquire says, you've had absinthe. What about you never drinking alcohol ever? I'm not a teetotaler. I have had alcohol in my life. So that's a well-known fact. So anyway, so knight a7 was played. So here I played g3. Now, one thing to note in this position here is the game essentially comes down to the minor piece play here between the bishops and the knights. So in this position, this knight on a7 looks awkward because the bishop controls the b5 square, so you can't really jump here. So you're going to have to go for a real long-term approach. At the same time, my knight looks good, but if my knight ever goes, let's just say knight e3 castles, knight c4, my knight looks great, but then I can see the b5 square now. Black's knight goes to d4 here. So for that reason, it's a very tricky position because ideally the knight belongs here, but then I give this square and I need the bishop to cover b5 as well. So for that reason, it's not obvious what the correct plan is. And also, I can't really break the queen side right away. If I try a3, I think after takes queen a3, black and castle, bishop d3, and something like queen b6, castles, and rook f8, and the b2 pawn is going to fall. And so black should be okay here. So for that reason, after knight a7, I played the very thematic move g3 here with sort of twofold. One, maybe I want to put the bishop on h3 and cover the c8 square, preventing rook c8. Secondly, maybe I want to go h4, stopping bishop g5. So here Fabiano correctly played rook c8. I played knight to e3. Now he castled. Bishop g5 was another interesting alternative here, perhaps. But Fabiano had a very concrete plan in mind, so he castled. I played h4. Now, the important thing with h4 is I prevent bishop g5. So black can never exchange the bishop for the knight. And it's also going to take a lot of time to try and bring the bishop around to b6 and exchange the other way. So for that reason, h4 makes a lot of sense. Can't be good at all for black to play b3 and provoke double pawns. Yes, b3 is definitely a logical move here. Yes, you guys, talking about the sound, I'm in St. Louis. There's nothing I can do about the sound. So let's shot enjoy the quality content because the sound is not going to be perfect. There's nothing I can do about that on my end. So after b3 here, I could take, or I could play a3. Takes queen b6 also makes sense, but then I can play bishop c4. If a4, then I can maybe just castle, take, and play something like queen e2 to prevent knight b5. I also am going to go rook a1 and rook a6 here as well and put pressure on the queen and the pawn. b3 is also weak as well. Maybe rook d3 and rook takes b3. Black still doesn't have bishop g5, so white should be quite a bit better here. Drinking some absinthe makes it sound so much better. All right, you guys. So after h4, Fabiano played rook to c5. Logical move in that he puts the rook on the open c file, and now he can also play knight c8, knight b6 without, or play knight c8, knight b6. Now the rook also is here, whereas it's very important. Like in this position, black can't go bishop g5. g6 is a little bit iffy with the rook on the h file. Whoa! Thank you, Son of Anne, for gifting 20 subs to the community. Thank you so much, Son of Anne. Wow. Thank you so much, Son of Anne, for gifting 20 subs to the community. Thank you. Thank you. Wow. So where was I before that? Yeah, really. Thank you, Son of Anne. Son of Anne gifted, I think, 20 subs the other day, 20 subs tonight as well. Thank you for being such a huge supporter of the stream. So here, Fabiano played rook c5. Again, like I said, he wants to put the rook on the c file. The rook maybe can go to c7 to keep the c5 square free for the knight here, but it looks kind of clumsy. Whereas like with rook c5, you can also put the queen on b6, very natural square, to put pressure on this long diagonal. And just in general, as a human, rook c5, just intuitively you sense that it's the right square more so than c7 if you're trying to play for this idea with knight d7. Noob Swag 98 says, Hikaru, how aren't you tired AF? I know what AF means. I'm not going to repeat it, but well, I mean, I've played chess my entire life. Like, I would hope that I'm not that tired. I only played like a 3-hour game today, so if I'm super tired after a 3-hour game, I should really just quit chess because it means I have no stamina and I'm not going to play at a high enough level. So. So after rook c5, I played bishop to d3 here. So I played bishop d3, and yeah, you guys like when you talk about stamina, like I mean, a 3-hour game, like by the standards of the super elite events that we play, most games go like 4 to 5 hours, if not 6 hours, and every time you have to play Magnus, it's a guaranteed 6-hour game too. So. You do have to be in fairly decent shape and capable of playing super long games. So, so if I was super tired after a 3-hour game, then like I really should not be playing chess professionally. I mean, like I just should not be playing chess professionally. If I don't have the stamina for a 6-hour game, I just should not be playing chess as a professional. So after knight to c8, here I castle, which oddly enough is a mistake. So. I think in the previous game against A Wonder Liang, we reached a position where we took a draw, or A Wonder accepted my draw offer and it was much better. And oddly enough, in this game, it seems that I misplayed this. Because at this point in the game, white is actually substantially better. So here I castled, and the other night I was completely roasting Jen, Yasser, and Maurice. Maurice more so than the other two specifically. But I was told that on the live broadcast, Mr. Yasser Sarawat himself, the crazy house and bug house legend of yesteryear, that he said I should castle by hand here. And oddly enough, he was right. So in this position, I castle, which is strangely wrong. Now, the reason it's wrong is because in this position, black's only plan here really would be to play for g6 and f5. And if I have the rook on h1 here, black can never really open up the king side. So, for example, if I play kind of like in the game, king f1, queen c7, king g2, knight b6 here, if I play like queen to e2 now, if black ever goes g6 with the idea of bishop g7, I can play something like rook f1 followed by bishop g7 h5 here. And black can never really open up the f file because of this open h file that's pending. And at the same time, my king is completely safe on g2, whereas the rook on f1 does nothing in particular, and it's much better here on h1. So this is fairly counterintuitive, and it's something that I should have thought of during the game. Sorry, you guys, if there are issues with. Sorry if there are issues with Twitch at the moment. I'm hearing some stuff going on, so sorry about that, you guys. Hopefully that'll get resolved and Twitch will come back. So, all right, so I should have played king f1 here. But I made the mistake of castling here, which it looks very normal again, looks very human. Twitch is offline. That was some good absinthe. Okay, Chess Bay, thank you. I'm completely fine. All right. So, all right. So in the game I castled here, which is wrong. So I should have played King F1, King G2 as Yasser suggested. But I made the mistake. I castled here. Fabiano played Queen C7, logical developing move, try to control the C file. Fabiano's main issue, or the thing that he was worried about, I think, is that if he plays some move like, let's just say G6, or not even G6, let's say Knight E7, the knight covers F5, but this idea with G6, F5 is very slow. You also can't push G6 because the bishop is hanging. And now white can start to fight for the C file here. If you ever trade and white gets a C file, white's much better because now I'm threatening rook C6 at some point. I can also put the knight on C4, and the knight will attack A5 and D6. And now the knight on E7 is not on A7, so there's no access square or no access point to D4 here. So for that reason, Fabiano played Queen C7, tried to contend for the C file, and then followed up with Knight B6, Knight D7, and Knight C5. So here I played Queen to E2. Fabiano played Knight to B6, and now I played a move that probably isn't best. I played Bishop to B5 here, trying to restrict this knight from having access to D7 and C5 here. At the same time, I want to activate the bishop. So if you think about this position very conceptually, both bishops are sort of locked behind pawns here. They're opposite colors, but they're locked behind pawns. And at the same time, I want to bring my bishop around, because if black doesn't ever play for F5, the bishop is never going to activate. I can maybe bring it back to E2 and G4 possibly to activate it that way. Black's bishop as well, maybe he can go to G7 and H6. Going around the other way is very unlikely, but it's possible, I suppose. So for that reason, I thought bishop B5 was logical to stop Knight D7. And now Fabiano went for the thematic G6 here. Now, someone says if I could understand chess concepts, I'd be much better at chess. The concepts in this game are pretty deep, to be honest. So it's not trivial in this game. Now here I played A3. Now it's worth noting again, if I had manually castled here, like if my rook was, let's just make a couple of random moves. Let's say I reach this position, then I could play H5, and I open up this H file, and the rook is just really, really good on this H file. Whereas in the game, unfortunately, with the rook on F1 instead of H1, H5 does nothing because there's nothing on the H file to attack with. So for that reason, that's why this whole idea of King F1, King G2 was immensely stronger than what I did in the game. But it's very hard. GM John Davis says, how often do you study these deep concepts reviewing historical games? Usually not that frequently in terms of like historical games, but a lot of the games that I'm having here in this event have some very interesting ideas. My game against Fabiano, the game against A Wonder as well, the game against Sam Sevian also had a lot of deep piece play, piece maneuvering that was very, very important. So yeah, like these games that I'm playing, you know, it's all about old man chess. If I win this event, it's going to be all because of the old man chess style, not the new age chess. So, but yeah, like this is old man chess. It's not about tactics. Tactics are for all these young kids like Sevian and A Wonder, all these younglings, them and their flashy tactics. Now I'm just an old man. I gotta drink my green tea and just play super slow, deep positional lines, and try to win that way. That being said, very briefly, I will say I was very happy to see A Wonder won a very nice game today against Varujan Akobian. It was nice to see him win a game. So he's played pretty well in the event, and he's had a little bit of bad luck. So it was quite nice to see him win a game. So, all right, you guys. So G6, I played A3. Fabiano played Bishop G7, trying to play for F5, F4. Also note, normally you'd want the bishop on G2, since the bishop makes much more sense being fianchettoed here, as opposed to being on B5. But so that's why this bishop here, it looks nice. It sort of dominates this knight. It covers two key squares, but there also are serious risks involved with F5, F4 coming here. So here I played A before, Fabiano took, and now I played the move Bishop D3, which during the game after I played this move, I made a slight miscalculation, so I was very unhappy with myself when I played this move, because I realized once Fabiano played Knight D7, that if I played Rook A1, which is my original intention, Fabiano could play rook a5. And the reason I was so unhappy is because when I went bishop d3, I thought, okay, I avoid all these f5 tactics because I cover the f5 square with my bishop and knight. I'm also going to go rook a1 and rook a6, maybe put pressure on the pawn and the knight as well. And if black goes knight d7, I just go rook a1. I still control f5. And I'm going to go rook a6 or maybe knight c4 and rook a6 and put pressure, maybe even double on the a file, go rook a7. And it should be pretty good. Fianchetto. It's keto. It's not, I mean, if we're being really precise, yeah, it's fianchetto. So when I played bishop d3, I thought at knight d7, rook a1, this is just a dream. I cover everything. And then to my horror, I realized that Fabiano has this very nice move, rook a5, very thematic as well, with the idea of just plopping the knight on c5. And if the knight gets to c5, I can never remove it because this pawn is on b4. So let's just make a couple of random moves. Like in this position, the knight hits e4. I can't ever push my pawn to b4 to remove the knight. So black's knight on c5 is just a god, and so it's really, really good for black if you can get this knight to c5. That's the strategy. This whole idea of knight a7, as the one and only Anijigiri mentioned, this whole concept with knight a7 was to go back to c8, b6, d7, and then to c5. So when I played bishop d3 and Fabiano played knight d7, I was very mad at myself because I felt that if I had seen this idea, I probably should have gone bishop c6. Although after f5, this is a big mess here. I can trade. And here I can trade, or I can play, I think I can play rook c1 here, or rook a1. But I think I would have played rook a1 here, and if f4, knight g4. And it's a very double-edged position. Fabiano and I discussed this after the game, and we weren't 100% sure what was going on. But it's very messy because it looks dangerous for black, but in reality, he's only got one rook and one pawn, and nothing else is really joining in. The knight and the rook are okay. The bishop is stuck behind the pawns. So it's a very double-edged position here for both sides. But we did conclude, I think, after the game, something like not takes actually, h5, knight h2, takes, and I think like rook f1 or not rook e8, rook f1. I think knight c4 or even knight d7 maybe, or knight c8, and basically queen b6 or knight e7 are coming. Then the c file becomes open because I have to move the bishop, and I don't really have any attacks here. The queen covers f7, the bishop covers f8. Although maybe I have bishop e8 here, possibly, but it's a very messy position with chances for both sides. In retrospect, I think I should have probably tried it. But as I said, when I played bishop d3, I saw, okay, I cover f5. I'm going rook a1. I'm going to take the a file. I'm going to double on the a file, rook a7, rook d7. And it's just going to be a beautiful positional masterpiece. And then as soon as Fabiano played knight d7, it's like, oh, what an idiot I am, because I realized rook a1, he just goes rook a5, then knight gets to c5, then it's all over. And if the knight gets to c5, if anyone has chances to win, it's definitely going to be black. So, all right, so here I played knight to c4. Sort of a twofold idea. So one reason knight d7 is also important here is if black plays some move, like some natural-looking move like bishop h6 here, well, I can play knight to c2, hitting the pawn of b4, black goes b3, and now there's a very, very, very nice move, knight to a1 here, putting the knight in the corner, but black can't protect this pawn on b3, and if I take the pawn on a b3, the rook is also going to be trapped here, so this would be completely winning for white if this were to happen, which is also why I was so annoyed that knight d7 was possible. But that's why I played knight to c4 now, because now I realize at this point in the game, there are some issues. I don't see the value of that square for the knight. Well, the point is if the knight gets, so let's do this. I'll give you an example. So let's say we reach this position. Let's just say we reach this position. So white's got the knight on c4 here. My knight on c4 can't be removed easily, for example. So this knight's very good, it hits d6, but the knight on c5 can't be removed either. And the point is that the knight hits e4, and I can't really attack this pawn on d6 with any of my pieces. Like even if I get the maximum with rook a1, rook a6 is still not a threat because knight covers a square, and black can put more pressure on the bishop and the pawn with f5 or even rook c8, and then trading on d3. So for that reason, this knight on c5 is significantly better than the knight on c4 here, and black should be better in this position. So that's why here I played knight to c4, because I realized I really need to stop knight c5. The rook can't go to a5, so black can't remove the rook and put the knight on c5 right away. If he tries rook b5, then I have knight takes d6, double attack on the rook, winning material. If black plays rook c8 like in the game, then I go knight d2. Actually, if black tries f5, which is probably the most aggressive try, I go knight d2. Same idea as knight a1, except here there's no pawn on b3, but knight b3 still is threatening to trap this rook on c5. If black tries f4, I think I was going to play knight b3, hitting the rook trapping it actually. Here, if black tries f3, queen e3, queen c8, there's a very nice move for white here. First person to guess the correct move here. I think we're gonna have some fun and give somebody. Let's just give somebody a 3-month subscription to chess.com. So what is the best move for white here, you guys? What is the best move? First person to guess the correct move here will get 3-month subscription premium to chess.com. Bishop f1 is not a legal move here. Bishop a6 is not the best move. Nobody's gotten it right yet. King g8, no, that's not the right move. Come on, let's go. There we go. Finally, somebody has gotten it right, and amazingly, only one person has still gotten it right. Wow. Only one person guessed my idea here. Wow, only one person guessed it. Even now, only one person guessed the move. Wow, that's amazing. I knew this was going to be hard. I figured a few people would get it, but only one person guessed the move. Even now, after everyone's writing, there still is only one person who guessed the correct move. Wow. Wow. So there must be at least 150 responses, and only one person got it right, and that person would be James C _UK. Only person to get the move right. Only person to actually guess the move that I would have played here. Which is why I said 3 months, because it's not an easy move to find at all. So the correct move, or the move I was going to play here, is knight to d2. So in this position, knight c5 knight c5 might actually be good as well. But knight c5 runs some risk, because now after knight takes c5, there are threats with queen h3 and mate on g2, because the pawn supports the g2 square. 1 second. So yeah, that's impressive. So if knight c5, as I was starting to say, knight takes c5, knight c5, black is threatening queen h3. So here, maybe I can play king h2 and I'm fine. Rook to e1 is the move that looks like the most logical, because I free up the f1 square for the bishop. So if black takes, if black goes queen h3, I go bishop f1, no mate threats anymore. If black takes on d3, I can go queen d3, queen h3, queen f1 again, covering the g2 square. So for that reason, rook f1 looks very logical, just create the square. But now black has a very annoying and nasty tactic here with bishop to h6. Or actually, wait, bishop h6, maybe it doesn't quite work. So it takes queen h3. There might be some queen f8 with rook f3. But I actually saw these ideas with bishop h6, knight d3, queen h3, and they kind of scared me. Again, even with rook e1, even with rook e1, black can play maybe even just h5, king h7, bishop h6. And it's not entirely clear to me that I'm winning here. I should be able to defend this probably with bishop f1, king h2, bishop h3. But just in general, I was very unsure about this. And I saw knight d2 was a very simple way to just win the pawn on f3, and then there are no mate threats. So even if black was knight f6 takes, knight g4, just queen e2, and I can follow it up with knight g5 and knight e6, and then I'll win everything. And if black can't really protect the pawn any other way, so it's just completely winning here for white. So when I saw these ideas, it helped me to not be afraid of these f4 ideas, because f3 really is the only idea here. If black tries queen c8 first, so that if I take, he then goes f3, I think I can even play maybe queen g4 and queen e6 check, hitting the king and hitting the pawn. And all this should be really bad for black. So that's why Fabiano correctly did not play correctly or not. I don't know, maybe he could have played f5, knight d2, and queen d8 here maybe, and the game goes on. But it's very, very sort of double-edged, and it's not clear what's going on. And for that reason, Fabiano played the much more pragmatic move, rook to c8, tripling on the c file, putting pressure on the knight on c4. If I move my knight, he can maybe go rook a5. He can even play bishop h6 here, try to exchange, and really just put pressure on the c file on c2 or c1 long term. So that's why here, after rook c8, I played knight d2. Idea to play knight b3 and trap the rook now. There are no f5, f4 ideas anymore, so Fabiano has to play rook a5. Now I played knight b3. Fabiano played rook a8. I played rook to c1 because now the knight supports the rook on c1, but it also prevents knight c5 too. So it's very thematic in a way that I get the knight to b3, prevent knight c5, and then I also fight for the open c file. Because earlier the problem here is the knight looks great on c4, but knight looks great on c4, but it doesn't do anything. Whereas black eventually is going to get the knight to c5. So I had to sort of put the brakes on it here with knight d2. And then after knight b3, so now the knight on b3 doesn't look anywhere near as good as c4, but in fact it prevents knight c5, and once I fight for the c file, there is absolutely no danger whatsoever for white here. So here Fabiano played rook a8, played rook to c1, he played queen to b6, we traded rooks, and after rook c8, rook a1, I offered him a draw. Perhaps it was slightly premature to offer Fabiano a draw here, but I felt that after knight c5, which is the best move in the position, queen c2, bishop to f8. Important move. Black can't take on d3 because then I take the rook with check. So bishop f8 is important here. If I just play a random move like king g2, black can play knight takes e4, hitting the queen on c2. If queen c8, there is queen takes f2. If king h3, queen takes g3 is mate. If king h1, knight takes g3 is checkmate. So for that reason, bishop f8 is important because now it's no longer check here. And now I would have to play, I think knight c5, rook c5, queen a4 is correct, but after, I think rook c7, followed by queen to d4, black should be okay. I probably should have made Fabiano find rook c7, but I have no doubt that he would have found queen d4 and rook c7 pretty routinely. So for that reason, that's why I offered a draw, because I felt that in this position there were very minimal sort of winning chances, perhaps. Did Fabiano accept the draw instantly? Not instantly, no. He took about maybe 2 to 3 minutes before he took the draw. But yeah, knight d2 is the critical move after I missed the original idea. So to go back a little bit, What we both sort of misunderstood in this game, I think, throughout, is we both thought that the rook on the c file was important, and if he gets the knight around it, it's good for black. But as computer has sort of showed me in the sort of post-game analysis here, if I play like bishop d3, knight c8, king f1, knight b6, king g2. Thank you, War of Ideas, for subscribing to Twitch Prime. If black ever goes like knight a4, I can just defend the pawn. If black ever tries to go knight d7, I think I can even just play like rook c1, or maybe just queen e2, and after rook c7, I can just sort of start to build the king side with like f3 and knight g4 or bishop b5. Because even if black gets this, the knight looks good on c5, but now I can cut the rook off with bishop c6, and there's no more access to the c file. And so this should also be good for white with the rook on h1. All these g6, f5 ideas are too slow as well. So for that reason, this is quite a bit better for white, but I slightly misevaluated it, and I think we both did. We sort of didn't understand the concepts that well, but obviously after the game, since we both looked at it now, I think we both understand what we could have done better. And so the game was I would say more or less balanced. There were probably a couple of critical moments where black had f5. Maybe I could have gone bishop c6. But overall, it was pretty balanced, and a draw was a pretty fair result. So definitely not a bad result to draw against Fabiano. So it was with that draw, I stayed tied for the lead at +1. So.